Okei, ma alustan. Ma eeldan, et siit saab minema. Ma eeldan, et Tartu kuuleb, kui keegi ei kuule, siis lihtsalt panin korra kõrvale Slacki ülesse ka, et andke siis märku. Inglise keel või eesti keel, kas Tartus on mõni ingliskeelne ka või? In English or Estonian? Nick is in English, okay. Okay, then I will talk in English as we have Nick here. Okay, probably will take an hour, so bear with me. Idea was to talk about smart home and or home automation or the smart houses or whatever the name is, how they call it. Basically, the market or the industry hasn't really agreed on it yet, but it has gone through several changes actually in the last decade. So I will give you a few ideas what I'm going to run through. So if you want it to be more technical, just give me a sign. But I will start with rather, let's say, from the background or the technology that because some of the people might have no experience with the topic itself at all. So one of the things is that what's this home automation is in general about. Then a bit about this ecosystem, that what is the, let's say, the current situation in the market, that what kind of platforms and sensors and devices you can find out there, and what is the direction that the industry is actually moving. And then a little bit of devices, then a bit about some technical protocols, then a bit of covering the hubs or the central devices, and actually nowadays we should talk about a little bit of the cloud services as well, how it's connected. Then a bit of interfaces, whether it's the app or the watches or the portals or the websites. You just can count them like thousands in there. Then the most important thing, that is there any point of this system at all that doesn't really give you any kind of value, and some of my own experience regarding whether to build the system or to buy something, or actually what is the options to use it, and probably a bit of the future, what I think it's going in the near years. Well, to start, actually, the thing is that I think it's been around since actually 70s when the first automation system were created. They used to be very security-centric devices, but I think the next wave of the things actually came in the 2000 when the first devices of the Internet of Things started to evolve, and maybe the biggest let's say explosion has been the last I don't know 5 to 6 years. But if you look at it's just one of the sample pictures that what this kind of home automation is about, that there is a lot of small areas which aren't really interconnected between themselves, and the good thing with it is that there wasn't actually any meaningful devices like let's say 10 years ago. Now we have tons of devices that do something, but they all, let's say, are independent in their functionality, and they don't actually interconnect very well with each other. You can then take individually the Philips lamps, for example, or you can take some kind of smart locks, or you can take I don't know, robot vacuum cleaners. Independently they work okay, but you actually cannot it's really hard to put them into one ecosystem that they would be truly automatic and wouldn't require this kind of person intervention. But I think this has actually now started to change, because at some point let's say last year or so, there was a couple of thousand different this kind of cloud system providers or the individual system providers. But now let's say that when the big players like Amazon and Google and Apple are taking more approach into this, they have actually start building this kind of platform where they are interconnecting those devices together. But still we have, let's say, more like devices and sensors out there that are not interconnected, but the process itself actually has started, which actually is a good thing, that they will standardize a number of devices so you can truly automate themselves. For example, that this kind of heat monitoring, or the lights, or any kind of other things are usually done through your platform, whether you have, let's say, Android device or iOS device or some kind of I don't know, Amazon like platform, but you can actually build like a ecosystem that is all, let's say, bundled into one platform, that you don't have to have, let's say, multiple independent systems and figure out how to interconnect those. So that's the major shift what is happening, this kind of connecting these different platforms and sensors together. But still, I would say that we are several years lagging behind. That will actually, it will be, like, say, standardized, because most likely it will not standardize so quickly, but we can see some kind of patterns that there aren't anymore, let's say, thousands of different protocols and ecosystems anymore, but they are narrowing down. Let's say currently we have still let's say 10 or 20 of those, but we will probably end up with, I don't know, 4 to 5 at the end of the day. Basically same with like the mobile platforms that at some point took place. There are, let's say, what is complex about this kind of home automation or the stuff is that there are several layers of the manufacturers and the complexity of the systems that need to interact together. So it's not, let's say, a one device binded together with the software and hardware, but actually there are several layers. The first layers is basically the devices, whether you take the individual lamp or the individual heater or the vacuum cleaner or any kind of, let's say, end device. So there is probably a number of manufacturers in there, but they mostly do have in the past done this kind of proprietary devices with proprietary protocols, so it's very hard to integrate those. But the standardization has actually evolved quite well, but still there are not coming actually new players into the market, but the bigger players are still gaining the market, but through that will standardize the system that will interact with the things. Then the second layer is basically any kind of connectivity or enablement. Usually it's again together with you can look at those second, third, and fourth level built into one. That those are the enablers layer that usually in the home automation you call them like hubs, whether it's the Alexa like speaker or the Apple TV as a home hub or the Samsung SmartThings hub. So basically any kind of hub that interacts as a gatherer device between the end sensors and devices and some kind of like a cloud system that binds all this together. Again, we can see here that there is a consolidation of different platforms. Bigger players have several times bought up this kind of smaller players in the market, and this is actually consolidating this market as well. But the thing is that you can never say that what platform supports what kind of devices. So this mess is still pretty big, and therefore you can find like slogans like works with Alexa, works with Apple HomeKit, works with smart Samsung SmartThings. So there is still a variety of things that might not work with one or another like hub or the platform, or in sometimes one manufacturer creates several the same functionality devices but different protocols that it would be supported by different this kind of hub. So this is still in the consolidation phase, and this is the biggest issue for the end customer, the user, actually to start using these devices, because they never know that what kind of platform should I use if I want to have this kind of specific functionality. For example, if you want to have, let's say, a smart door lock, you have to figure out that what is the correct smart door lock that works with your, let's say, preferred platform, whether it's, for example, if it's like a HomeKit from Apple, or is it like SmartThings from Samsung, for example, because they are not interconnectable with different manufacturers. Even the technical protocols besides the hardware is really different. And then on top of that, there are basically can be also different kind of let's say service providers. Most relevant, I think, are the security services that you can install the SmartThing application yourself, but you can buy additional services, let's say kind of security alert service or anything like this on top of that. Or there are a few of these electricity services as well, but this is not very evolved market because they have an issue that they don't have this underlying platform in there. So that's the kind of the current situation of the cloud itself and market. But if you look at into one area which is kind of let's say the sensors or the things or the enablers that you build into the system, you can just think whether it's the lightning system, is it related to the home security, whether it's the cameras or door sensors or the moving sensors, but act as a presence identification. Of course, there are, let's say, smart locks and thermostat or any kind of heating system solution. Smart plugs, basically, if you want to turn on whether it's the, I don't know, if it's the device or some kind of irrigation system, or is it some kind of heating system like component. So basically, the area of the smart plugs is really wide, but even there is several different aspects. One is the let's say plug and play device. Second thing is that you install under this lightning system, and third thing is that you want to put in this electricity circuit box, for example. The places where you can install these things are very different, and if you go into more complex level, this is something that the average customer themselves actually cannot do. So from the customer perspective, it's something it's worth to consider if you start building or total renovating a new house, when to consider this kind of hardware electricity devices, because after installment is rather complex in those kinds of situations. So a number of devices, but as said, the biggest issue is that it doesn't work like this, that I want to have like a smart plug, I will buy one and it will start magically working, because you really have to look whether it works your specific platform. If you have, let's say, invested into hub, whether from the Samsung or from the Amazon or the I don't know, Apple, or even there are a number of actually third party this kind of platforms as well. And why it's complex is that if you look at devices, how they will interact with the system, the most notably, if you look at the Apple HomeKit solution, how it works with the network level is mostly through the Bonjour or the HTTP services. So this is how the sensors are built. So they are sending this kind of network messages over the Wi-Fi or over the Bonjour to the standard network, and this is how this Apple TV or the Apple Home hub is basically getting this information. When you look at some other things, for example, if you look at let's say, for the example, Samsung SmartThings hub, then there is things that it will support besides the Wi-Fi. It basically supports the Bluetooth in very, let's say, bad level, or not as much as all, but most notable things what it supports is the Zigbee and Z-Wave, which is the two standards that is the wireless standards that is mostly used in the sensor devices. But if you look at the Zigbee or the Z-Wave protocols, the value of those protocols is that this is a wireless protocol. Basically, it's 868 megahertz or 2.4 gigahertz or even a little bit like higher, but they are using these different radio protocols, and their, let's say, extension of the devices is very limited. But from the other perspective, the value of this Z-Wave or Zigbee protocols is that it's like a mesh network. So basically, if you look at the sensors in a room, it's in a Wi-Fi you usually have to have, let's say, multiple of Wi-Fi repeaters on the same network that it would connect. But with the Z-Wave or Zigbee mesh network is that some of the devices acts as in default as a repeater without that the user has to really configure anything. So even if your distance from the hub to the sensors is let's say more than 50 meters, then the sensor in between there can actually repeat the signal of the secondary or the third or the fourth sensor. So that's the idea of the mesh network. So many of those sensors in the network actually are acting also as a repeaters, to extend the signal over the room. And the other cool thing about Zigbee and Z-Wave is that those are the protocols which is so energy efficient that they can actually live with on the battery, let's say, one battery life expectation would be from 1 to 3 years within the sensors, that they can actually doesn't consume much of this power. Instead of if you look at the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth, basically the devices wouldn't hang on with the battery life more than a few hours or a few days, for example. So that's the value of this Zigbee and Z-Wave technologies, besides the mesh networks and low energy consumption. The question. So that's the thing, that those kind of protocols are the main kind of the bottlenecks, that what is the protocol that the hub actually is able to support. And also, if you look at the protocols themselves, they call this Zigbee and Z-Wave like standard, but it's not truly standard, because Z-Wave is one company-owned protocol. Basically, they can do or change whatever they wanted that, so you can't really rely on that as a standard. And if you look at the Zigbee, although it's standard, there are very many ways how different companies implement that standard. So this is not truly like a standard. So it's kind of like, let's say, the HTTP, but everybody has their own kind of idea on top of that, how they will implement that. Yes. Yes, they are, but no. The thing is that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, they are not energy efficient. You cannot do the radio devices based on that; they will die in a day or so. And they don't have the range, and the customer never want to set up new, let's say, repeaters for the Wi-Fi. That's the value of the Zigbee, is that every device that you have basically is able work as a mesh network that repeats the other sensor signal as well. So you just put them, lay it out, and they will actually start repeating this kind of signal. So the end user doesn't really have to think of the coverage of the network. But radio protocols is that in a closed room, when you already have this kind of concrete walls or kind of ceilings, basically you are killing the signal so heavily that doesn't sometimes even go to the subfloor or the room next to the intermediate room. So the signal is so quickly fading in those kind of things. But still, there are a number of other protocols, whether it's the custom radio protocols, most notably if you look at any kind of radio protocols on 433 megahertz, for example, which is a good signal in the sense that it's a lower level hertzes, but the extension could be easily like several hundred of meters, even with the obstruction. But the downside is it's not a mesh, it's not low energy, and it's not secure enough in some context. So it has its downsides. Proprietary things, you can also find in the market a number of those. I think the biggest is kind of the Instant, for example, but this is something that it works only their own devices and very hard to integrate for the other world. And a number of legacy devices, for example, like X10 as a power line communication protocol, for example, over the wired connection. Again, you can build, let's say, things that could integrate into that, but you cannot, let's say, plug and play install this kind of thing. So that is one of the biggest things that actually has been obstructing the evolvement of the smart houses. Because if you look at what Apple does, Apple usually tries to use this kind of Wi-Fi or the network over the HTTP. If you look at the Samsung Smart Hub, they have implemented in their own hub radios both for the Zigbee and Z-Wave and Bluetooth, for example. Some other manufacturers have different things, but it's about the sensors, about the compatibility of these protocols, and also the, let's say, the user experience and interface on top of that. So again, quite many layers. Yep. Yes, no, I wouldn't say they are anyway like slower. I think the biggest issue in the early days was the battery life. Although it was let's say 6 to 12 months, which was considered already a big improvement over the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth, it's still average user wants to put their sensor into into some kind of socket or a ceiling, and they don't want want to touch it for the next couple of years. No, it's the same with the smoke alarm sensor in the ceiling. You don't want to go change the battery every now and then. So that was the thing. And in the earliest version, the Z-Wave also had like no security layer. So basically, you could easily listen all of the network messages, and you can, oh, I want to now send some kind of alarm signal. I want to now open some kind of door. Basically, it has like no security layer. Now it has. No, exactly. And the security was like one of the biggest issues. But they have solved that in the later versions. And also the some of the things that as it's a early market, you had to support this kind of over-the-air update for the firmware. But again, earlier versions didn't support that, so you were unable to actually implement this kind of software or firmware updates to the devices. But again, this is now on the let's say third life cycle, has basically improved quite a lot. So I would say that this is rather okay, both the security, life expectancy, and let's say from the protocol side as well. But the downside this is still that the implementation of these protocols is still, let's say, different vendors do a little bit differently, but it's getting better. I think in that market they pretty much have, because looking at even the, let's say, the next levels of Bluetooth implementations, probably the Bluetooth is unable to reach there. And one of the downside is that what Bluetooth still hasn't been able to do is the mesh network. It doesn't. Exactly. So they're probably not going into the same direction for in the long term, though they have some kind of overlapping areas, but not completely substituting each other. And Zigbee is something that is considered a bit more pro level, because it's been implemented also in the number of industries. Let's say for the energy industry, this remote readable electricity stuff and those kind of areas as well. So it's more, let's say, a rigid industry standard, and it's open. It's not one company owned, but the downside is, as I said, they follow it kind of sluggishly, this kind of standard. So it's not always let's say a straight standard to follow. So you might have, let's say, a Zigbee device, and you might have a Zigbee hub, but they don't interact together. It needs some kind of additional improvement in this sense. And with the Z-Wave, it's also the bad side is that Z-Wave supports multiple radio frequencies. For example, if you buy a Z-Wave device from the US, which works on the 800 something frequencies, and in the Europe it's 2.4 gigahertz frequency. Again, you cannot use US device in Europe and vice versa. Again, like a huge downside in this sense. So Zigbee is in that point a bit better, let's say, standard. It uses not the same radio frequency everywhere, but let's say the vendor kind of implementation might have, let's say, the differences in it. But still, I would say that the downside for both is that in a big environment, this radio coverage is not so good. And that's why this mesh network is really, really important. That if you have, let's say, more than 10 devices, then this mesh network actually starts working pretty well, and you can overcome this kind of limitation of range. So that much about this kind of background of devices. I don't know, any questions regarding this? Okay, I will jump to the cloud versus local. Earlier versions of these smart home devices or ecosystems were built in a way that they had this kind of hub or a local device, and all of those kind of business logic was put into this local hub or local device that acted as a gateway. For a couple of years, actually, most of the players have now moved away, and because this the issue with this kind of local hub was that if you wanted to be really, really powerful and have this kind of interfaces and portals and APIs and this kind of automation logic, they required quite a lot of hardware, like backup batteries, different kind of radios, different kind of rather powerful processors, and the price went too high on this let's say hub devices. So in order to bring this down, they cut it basically the hardware capability of those devices and put a lot of those logic into the cloud services. So basically, if you look at today any kind of this platform, you can actually see that this hub actually just is acting as an aggregator and gateway to the cloud service, where actually this kind of automation logic or this interaction takes place, which from one side is good that you always have this kind of backup, even if your, let's say, device dies or something like this. But from the other hand is that the privacy or the information, actually anything what can happen in your home actually in the, I don't know, service providers cloud system, and there are sometimes issues with the privacy. But I think that this is pretty much how most of the world anyway moves to the cloud with many services. So in larger picture, I think it's not an issue, though there are a few people that really don't want to put their information into cloud. And I think the biggest worry is sometimes if you interact with some network camera service and this is, let's say, stored in the cloud. It is very convenient, but no, there are a lot of these privacy and security issues. But it's very hard to these days to find something that works locally, and usually those are all hackable systems these days. That it's really hard to find something that is truly local and doesn't require internet connection or any kind of cloud service. No, anyway, it's whether it's the Apple iCloud is your information, or is it like Samsung cloud, and you can build like a secure communication to the cloud service, but still all of your data and automation is stored in the cloud. So if you don't have this connection, let's say the internet connection is down, probably the automation in some level won't work for you. So you have to have actually consider that you have, let's say, a solid connection to the cloud as well. So it's very hard to build like a locally, let's say, working like system, or you will have very limited functionality in this case. But no, that's the thing. Some of the things maybe to say that one thing is the cloud service of the let's say the hub provider itself, but actually there is a number of third-party connectors. So most notably, I think, is to mention this IFTFT, basically, which stands for if this then that something should happen. So basically, this is a cloud-based web service like platform that has built like integration with very different models. Let's say that if something happens in one web camera, then Alexa says something in speaker. Or something happens in the I don't know, movement in the room. So basically, it can also make like a log trail in the Google Sheets, for example, for you. So you can build very many different kinds of interaction between different kind of services. So there are few of those cloud platforms as well that are meant to be, let's say, not individually to host the service, but actually to integrate different kinds of services between the things. And actually, this is the things that will make it more capable of having this kind of use cases what you are after, because out of box, none of those platform builders themselves actually will give you much of this kind of functionality, especially if you don't have the supporting sensor or device for that purpose. Yes, you can, but I will go show the hack how to do that. But it requires a lot of building your own, but it's doable. Still yet it is, but not very easy. Yeah, exactly. So if you jump into the whether to buy something or to build your own, then if you look at the buying option, you most likely are unable to buy a platform that satisfies all of your needs if you have, let's say, a number of different kind of needs. For example, if you're trying to find, let's say, a smart lock and the lighting and irrigation system, most likely you will find 2 out of 3 in one platform and one functionality on the second platform. So it's not always so easy to find working things. So but if you can, then definitely sticking into one platform is easier, and you do have to buy the sensors, but you don't always have to buy multiple of these platforms of these hubs. and interconnection is a bitch anyway. And to think to anyway to consider is that most likely it will be some kind of cloud-based system anyhow. Apple is closed. Basically, you don't have any kind of API regarding this. Samsung, for example, on controversial is actually having open API where you can define your own devices and modify their interaction as well. So you, for Samsung SmartThings, actually have, let's say, public API to interact with. If something comes out of the box, but you can actually code yourself as well. Some things there. If you're looking a bit further, then there is open platforms like OpenHub, or you can build something on the hardware regarding whether it's the PC or Mac, or you put it on the Raspberry Pi, for example, and using some kind of platforms, let's say OpenHub, like in Linux-based system, or you can use the Homebridge, for example, which is an extension for the Apple HomeKit, basically a node-based system that can be run on the PC or on the Unix system that will give you the opportunity to actually interact with even the devices that don't have this capability of working with iCloud or this Apple HomeKit system, but you can actually through this kind of extensions. I think that today is like community has written 1,000+ extensions for the different services that will extend Apple HomeKit platform in this Homebridge platform, for example. Whether it's the HTTP service, it's a third-party, I don't know, Lightning system, or is it some kind of I don't know, integration with the TV or the receiver services? You can actually through that connect to also the devices that doesn't natively have the support for the HomeKit, and the same with the OpenHub and similar platforms as well. But no, it will require that you will install your own server and have this let's say custom scripts for that. I think in the OpenHub you probably can implement your own, let's say, radio plugins as well if you want to put this C-Wave dongle or this Zigbee dongle as a radio and connect with that. But going to the low level of building your own radio interaction protocol on the Zigbee or C-Wave is another layer of headache that is probably too much even for the experienced programmer, because it's a radio protocol and efficiency management. So it's again, you can probably build communication with the device, but you have to take consideration that how often you call this device that you wouldn't kill this kind of battery life and stuff like this. So there is still a lot of things that I would rather say that at least it's been like too much. I've done it like once, but I've seen that I'm killing the devices so quickly that it's not worth hustle and let this kind of hub or platform interact with the low level communication of the devices, but to build on top of that some kind of automation or HTTP services, for example. But for the number of the things what you can actually find, that even if you build this capability through the hub with different kind of sensors, I think last when I looked, there was probably 1,000+ different kind of apps that had some kind of home automation logic. I would rather say that there used to be number of portals or websites as well where you can have this kind of interfaces, but nowadays I have, let's say, very few of those portals or the websites where you can actually modify or configure or have some kind of information. Most of the interface logic has actually gone into the mobile applications, but on top of that you can also see that there are implementation for the watches, there are implementation for the speakers like Alexa or Google Assistant or this kind of voice interaction. So the interfaces are mostly mobile applications or some kind of voice assistant. So what is the main interface for the home automation? Because if you look at the average person, also the question for the interface, they usually say that, okay, it's fun to play it once, but other than that, you want to actually to happen automatically. You don't want to like a daily, let's say, interact with the system. So you're actually looking for the automation. And if you want to interact, then it's most easiest way is to actually have this kind of voice command in some cases. In all of the other cases, it's good enough if it happens automatically. So you are not so much actually looking for the, let's say, very rich interface in this field in the long run, although it seems fun in the early beginning. So about building it yourself, you can have actually this kind of system, but use the standard Apple HomeKit interface. You have, let's say, your own, let's say, relay for some controller. You have some kind of I don't know, Arduino or some kind of Raspberry Pi like board, but no, this is not the path actually that the average customer takes. So basically, this is the complexity next to the phone that actually is hidden away inside the hubs, that those kind of radio protocols and this kind of relays, for example, this motors or sensors. So basically, this is the simple on-off relay for the engine. What this garage store is actually saying about, and most of the people won't go into that way. The thing with this kind of if I'm looking at the prices, the interfaces are pretty much free. Download them from the app store. Probably sometimes they ask you a couple of bucks for the application as well. Not really a cost. If you look at the hubs, whether it's the, let's say, the smart things, Samsung smart things hub is around, I would say, let's say, plus minus like 10 euros, around 100 euros is the smart things hub. If you look at the Apple HomeKit, this Apple TV, I think it's roughly, considering the model, it's 160 or 200 euros probably, or a little bit more, I don't know. Yeah, roughly like 200. So it's twice the price of the Samsung, for example, the home hub. If you look at the very, very complicated things, let's say, for example, this Fibaro central device or the home hub, which has a lot of more functionality as well, like local backups and stuff like this, it will cost around, I don't know, 400 euros or something like this. So the price range is very, very wide in this kind of home hubs, considering the functionality, what they do. But to look at the average person's, let's say, starting point, they usually say that 100 euros is basically the ceiling what I'm able to, I want to pay for that system, because I don't know the value what it will give me, and that has been the main, let's say, obstacle. But if you look at the individual sensors, then I would say roughly that the average sensors cost like 50 euros, whether it's the movement sensor or the on-off sensor or the temperature sensors. Some are very expensive, up to, I don't know, 250, like a Nest thermostat, for example. Cameras are around 60 to 200, for example. But you can also, let's say, find like sensors, let's say, are on-off switches, which is Wi-Fi based, for example. Sonoff, cheap Chinese basically manufacturers, will give you, let's say, $10 per each of those. But again, you are by default restricted with their cloud service, which is totally crap. And you have, let's say, a cheap device, but the cloud service is crap. So no, and that's why I would say that the sensor would cost you like from $10 to $300, for example. But no, it's always the limitation that how it interacts with your preferred platform where you wanna integrate it. But at the end of the day, if you want to have, let's say, truly, let's say, convenient home, you will at least end up with 10 to 20 or 30 sensors. And if you count it together, you have to pay like 20 sensors each of 50 euros. You will end up with 2,000 of investment for the sensors. So it's quite a lot of actually money. So actually building it piece by piece is better, but choosing the right platform is the most important thing, that what you are targeting after. Because you might see something that costs from the sensor perspective not too much, but at the long run you are ending up with a useless sensor that you have nothing to do with it. So that's the pain what a lot of these early adopters have actually gone through, a bunch of sensors that are worth nothing at the end of the day. What else to add maybe is that I think one of the things is that it will go pretty much more mainstream as the big players are gaining the market, so the smaller are actually falling off the pace in this market. But when I'm looking at the big players in the market, they are heavily investing in this kind of voice interaction or voice application, that everything is either automatic automatically happens through some kind of defined rules, or is it some kind of voice related things? The bad thing is that Siri is kind of crap from the voice interface. Alexa is much better, but with the kids, I'm struggling that they are not native English speakers, so they are still unable to say that kitchen lights turn on. So it's doesn't really happen very well. So it's again like Estonian barrier is a big issue here. But no, if you are able to pronounce it good in English, then it actually works pretty well. But no, from the other hand, if you have, let's say, a phone in your pocket and to turn on some kind of lights, actually it's easy as hell anyway. And when you leave home, automatically the lights go off. So again, you don't have to even say anything about the system, whether it's English or Estonian, doesn't really matter. But no, I'm seeing that this voice is kind of the things that which drives this kind of path today, that how the big players are implementing this market. And of course, there are watches have also the interfaces. If you look at the Apple Watch or the Samsung Watch, or even the Garmin has extensions for Samsung, for example, in some cases. So you can have actually some of those features there as well. But also the mobile phone is like extender in a sense that you can share this kind of through the family, this kind of accesses with accounts, and even from the mobile phone you can have this kind of presence, or this kind of information, or this GPS tracking, in a sense that if you have this kind of fence of the GPS, if you are in the radius of the home, closer or leaving, basically can start some kind of automation as well. So in some cases the mobile phone is quite let's say the native things to the system that extends this kind of functionality. About this kind of interfaces, as said, there is some of the things are what the platform providers themselves offer, but also the third party things that are sitting on top of the in the Samsung case, for example, on top of the API, or in the Apple case are sitting on top of the iOS internal ops system. Basically, you can build your own home application interface that just uses this HomeKit underneath it. So it has all this kind of extension. If you're not satisfied with let's say out of box builds, and usually those third party things have this different UX UI feel is one thing, but they also in many cases actually extend this kind of automation logic, what kind of automation rules you can create. Because if you consider this thing that you want to have really heavy or customized automation rule, then I would say the Samsung probably is much more capable system of defining your own rules, or even writing your own code in it. But Apple has a really limited functionality regarding these automation rules out of box, and that's why this kind of third-party integrators have built a more capable of application that allow more rules. But again, you need to look at if you really need those kind of rules, because some of those apps are built by this kind of tech enthusiasts that come up with really crazy rules, what average person never really like uses. So it's not always kind of needed in that sense. But I think that from the general perspective, the user interfaces have gone less techy, and let's say rather taking this average user approach, which feel kind of more easy to use. So they are not overpacked anymore with this kind of techy features too much. At least the easier starting point is quite nice, so it's not like too heavy. But again, I think there is a taste for everybody, and sometimes this average user is just unable to go through this kind of very heavy automation rule. Because if you try to look at the rules, automation, what should happen automatically, you can have, I don't know, tens of different like starting points, whether the sun rises or the power happens, or movement was there, or something was turned off, or somebody arrived home, or I don't know, it was too dark outside, or somebody say the word to the speaker. So the cascade of different automation rules is so heavy. So it's for average user, again, it's it seems like too complex, I don't want to have it. It's like having like Excel macros in some cases that average user never uses those kind of scenarios. So if there is a system can automatically provide the user some kind of rules, is actually what takes off this kind of system. And that's why what I'm seeing today is that some of those platforms are actually step by step building this kind of artificial intelligence into the system that actually follows the habits of the user and tries to create the rules itself based on this kind of user habits. And some of those things are, let's say, have like built-in functionality. For example, Nest thermostat, for example, it basically monitors all the time when people are home, and on few weeks it will understand that okay, people are usually leaving home like 8 o'clock and coming back at 5, so I will create like say a rule that it will turn this kind of thermostat down, for example, for a couple of hours. So, but not all of the devices are capable of doing it, and it's another question whether it's built into the device or built into the platform like logic. But I think this is the path that actually will evolve much quicker in upcoming years. Okay, the point why to have the system. I think I can only talk from personal experience, because I think different people find like different values from the system. But for me, the first point is that, for example, the light automation, for example, is one of the key conveniences for me, that I'm so lazy to get my ass off the couch to turn on some kind of light in the living room, so it's easy to turn it off or on or dim it some way. And especially if the kids forget to turn off some kind of light, so it's easy just to have, let's say, one button that kill all the lights in the home. So I don't really have to drag my ass around the house to see that where it's having this kind of lights on. And second thing, of course, is that if I'm coming home or leaving home, it turns on the lights or turn off the lights. So again, I don't have to interact with the lights, but still all of the buttons on the wall are actually working for the lights. So then I have like integrated those into the electricity circuits in themselves. So like old school still is like working, but again, like kids and lazy ass is the key motivator here, that where I see the value. I have push buttons, so basically I don't have like on off buttons. I have, let's say, impulse switches on the wall. So yeah. So basically, my mobile phone actually says that I'm beyond the geofence. Let's say farther than 500 meters from the home, nobody's home anymore. So it says that okay, nobody's home anymore. Kill the lights. So basically, and the same way when I'm arriving home, it's already having this kind of lights turned on. So it's pure laziness in that sense. Of course, it helps a bit in the electricity bill again, but lights are so little consumption, so it doesn't. I think it doesn't affect too much. No. It's my phone constantly GPS is on. It tells to the Apple HomeKit ecosystem that I arrived home, and Apple HomeKit is connected through the hub to the light devices, so they will turn it off and on. Yes, I have many of those as well. They can interact with like lights as well, but I don't use them that much in few rooms, but not like constantly, because if you yeah different sensors from light bulbs. Yes, it is, but adjusting the light sensor or this moving sensor and this kind of delay times in reasonable things. I tried to do it a couple of times, but I had so eclectic movement in the room. So it was like 2 minutes in the room, then like 30 minutes off, then like 50 minutes in the room, then like two hours in the room, and there was sometimes somebody watched the TV, no movement, but person was still in the room, so the lights turned off. So there was so much of those hassle with moving sensor. It didn't work. Yeah, I can. Yeah, because that is done that iPhone connects to the iCloud connects to the Apple TV Home Hub, and that is connected to the through this kind of different HTTP services to the devices. So if you have this kind of let's say iPad or Apple TV for the iPhone in let's say ecosystem, then this Apple TV or this iPad actually acts as a hub and it connects to the iCloud, so you can actually have remote management as well. Yes, it should act as the same. But I think Apple HomePod was like really crazy because I don't know. After looked at it once and yeah, after said that, oh fuck, I will have like a better speaker and better like hub in this case. It's too expensive. No, well, but the capabilities there is still a big gap. But no, as said, very individual taste what you're after. The second thing what really gives me a value is I would categorize it, whether it's the safety or the security or the peace of mind, because I have, let's say, like kids a couple of time coming from the school and they are calling me that, daddy, I left my keys home. So it's for me that easy to just push a button, open the garage door, they walk in, they are not freezing to death. So basically that's the secondary killer application for me, that in some cases I can really see that the kids are happily like home. Really, I can open the door remotely, they can walk in. Or sometimes I have this kind of camera that monitors the front doors, that every time they walk past the front door, I get some kind of video recording of that and some kind of push notification that somebody came. And sometimes it's good to see that that you have, let's say, some kind of package coming from this kind of courier company, and really that, okay, whether they came or not really to backtrack whether somebody has visited your home, even if they said that they are not coming or coming. Or sometimes I'm seeing that kids are taking this kind of package from this courier. So it's always, I don't know what kind of creepy guys there could be that giving the package. It's again like some kind of peace of mind. So that's the second killer thing for me. And the third killer thing for me is that as I've integrated some of those on-off switches with the heating system, whether it's the floor heating system or is it, let's say, the heating pump, for example, I have like a number of set rules that whether it starts with home heating on some kind of predefined times, or when the sun rising or is going, or if I'm on vacation, let's say turning it on, let's say 1 day or a half day beforehand, or turning it off. Actually, I monitored, like, say, couple of years this kind of electricity like consumption and bill. And in the early days, I didn't have any kind of automation. I was paying quite a lot for the heating because it was pretty much on all the time was on. And when I started to implement for the individual floor heatings or the like general heating pump for this heating system and optimizing this kind of timing, I pretty much could, I would say that some 25 to 30% of the cost I was able to cut. And when I'm looking today, this kind of energy prices, I think the current I think I have, let's say, 8 years of the statistics. Each year, basically, the electric price has risen quite a lot for the past 10 years. But I'm pretty much stayed on the same level of the prices, because I have been able to actually cut down this kind of electricity consumption with some kind of automation. I haven't changed much about those some areas regarding kids still turn the lights on, but if I'm looking at the energy balance, the lights aren't really affecting this kind of in total this heating, because most of my heating is based on electricity, heat pumps and stuff. So the optimization of that working cycles has a huge impact on this electricity bill. So that's the third thing. And I would say that even probably I have, let's say, invested a few hundred euros for this kind of sensors. I'm pretty certain I have already, let's say, gained back this kind of investment in this sense. I have this water, air to water heating system. So it's I'm optimizing both individual this kind of circuits of this kind of floors and the main pump of inside routing of the heating pump. So the outside routing for it's still standard, but the inside routing, if the inside doesn't work, the outside automatically stops working anyway. So it's easy to actually consider it in this way. So that's the three things that really give me value. Of course, there are a few other things as well, but I don't think as a security, as like burglars and stuff like this, really that heavy or important. Or there is actually one thing that once I had this kind of water leaking. So the bad thing is where I was missing out this kind of water valve. If I would have done that, I would have turned the water off, like main valve. But lucky was that sometimes if I'm on a vacation, I'm away, I'm just checking if everything is okay, and then I decide, oh fuck, the first floor is like a bit of underwater because some pipe broke, and then I was okay. I cannot go to my home myself, but I said to Dad that okay, go home. I will open the garage door and go close the water like a valve. But I could identify that through this kind of like a video, not through some kind of sensor or some kind of, let's say, water valve, for example. But again, I would say that if probably that is in the long run for the next thing I will probably implement to actually control some kind of the water valves as well, especially if something bad happens. Okay, so if you just a picture that how my setup is done. So I have different I have different Zigbee devices, I have different Z-Wave devices, then I have some legacy X10 power line control devices, and basically those are built into this custom built Homebridge system that connects to the Apple TV, which connects to the Apple HomeKit. So I have a bunch of legacy devices. I've been trying to build them together because I'm dealing with that like 10 years, but this is the mess that the average user doesn't really have to go through in the long run if you stick to the one let's say platform. But I'm just have been trying out. This is the current setup. I have in the past even some other hubs and stuff as well where I have implemented into the system, but still this is the been the enabler for me to build together different kind of platform and different kind of services and a little bit of coding myself in these things. But at least I have kind of experience for different kind of protocols and different kind of hubs what they're capable of doing. But the thing is that I can still manage those all through this kind of mobile phone or this kind of automation tool that will happen that. Not very good picture, but basically I have currently like a Windows server where some kind of components is running some PHP stack, and I have kind of serial and HTTP extensions to the different kind of end networks as well. So, but it's not something that is very beautiful. It's something that kind of a lot of legacy of myself that I've been building, but mostly it's using PHP and Node in the server side, that just to bring those different sensors and different platforms together. But again, the average person can really forget all that and have one hub, connected devices, and you don't have to build this kind of shit around this complexity. Yeah, and for the last bit, I think for the future, what I'm really thinking is that the AI part is going bigger. I've seen it in many cases that where they can actually think on beforehand of the user how it's changing. The voice is definitely a big killer, but the sad thing is that it will be other 10 years until we will interact with Estonian really well, because these days the systems are really crap, and this interoperability of different platforms and sensors is definitely going better, and I'm already seeing this kind of let's say there are going to be less platforms in the future out there, and I think that probably there are not going to be any kind of new vendors in the market. Again, those big old vendors will probably take this kind of market, like say whether it's the Google or Amazon or Samsung or Apple, basically will still at the end of the day will land somewhere there in this kind of platforms. And what is to be expected is that although the security has been constantly improving, I think there will be a hell lot of security issues and security breaches in those kinds of the wider this kind of implementation in the market goes, the more attractive it is for the different kind of hackers. So it's a constant race regarding all of those issues. So it's, if you're really, let's say, uneasy about this kind of security and are afraid of that, no, then better not to have the system. But no, I would say that anyway, the Google knows everything about it today. It's a question that whether you put this kind of next camera movement sensor into the bedroom or into the kitchen. So there's a big difference where you put some of those sensors. So that's the core issue. Just be smart about that you don't give too much information out. And other than that, I wouldn't say that technologically it's not that bad, but it's not good either. In some cases, you might run into the things that are absolutely has like no security whatsoever. So it's very easy to listen sometimes those kind of sensors, especially this kind of early days devices, if they are Zigbee or Z-Wave, or even these days I can find these cheap Chinese Wi-Fi sensors that have like no security at all. So free radio, you just listen to them and connect and hack them. So it's easy to hack actually those things. So, but that's about it. Any questions you wanna have like in more details on some areas? I have a number of door sensors. I have some, and actually all door sensors and movement sensors and these smoke sensors usually have this kind of temperature sensors with them as well. So you basically can have this kind of temperature controlling. These movement sensors very often also have this kind of light sensors in them, so you can actually detect whether it's bright or not bright in the room. These on-off switches, whether they are into the junction box or into the wall socket, some of them are just on-off, but some of them are also dimmable. So basically, you can dim some of the lights as well. And there are, I don't have personally, but there are also things that are able to control, let's say, the LED lights with different colors, like RGB LEDs, for example. So you can put those as well. And I had like both Zigbee and Z-Wave sensors for that purpose. I think I have a number of cameras, different kind of cameras. I have this garage door. I'm also have few of those heating system controllers. Then some kind of legacy X10 based switches and again dimmers for the lights. And actually through that the box, whether it's the HTTP services or the RS-232 kind of serial box services, I have also integrated this receivers, TVs, projectors. Oh, there was something else. So basically, kind of media devices I have also implemented in that, and some of the services that are actually able to run on the PC as well. Whether you have some kind of Spotify or iTunes or something like this, you can actually turn those on off to that platform as well. So basically, if you're saying I'm defining an automation rule that let's put the movie mode. So movie mode basically means that turn on the TV, the receiver, kill the lights, and do something like else. So basically, you can automate those in the bunch. But if I'm looking whether if I can integrate let's say the receiver or the TV to the Apple platform, I really cannot, because there are no devices that are able to do that. But as an extension, as a home bridge service in the server side, what is running, I'm actually been able to define different kind of services as long as they have some kind of, I don't know, HTTP endpoint. Like sometimes I've built some kind of backend service for that specifically, but no, I can extend actually the list of services what can interact with the system. And that's why for me the complex thing. But that's a downside, that if you look at the individual platform, for example, SmartThings, Samsung SmartThing, you have out of box, it can probably control you the fridge, the TV, the vacuum cleaner, for example, but you don't have this capability in the Apple TV. But for example, in the Apple TV, you might have different devices. Yeah, some sensors are out of box, and there is a list that what is supported by them. But for some sensors, I've actually gone to their API and build my own device handler for that specific, that it would control some kind of third-party device that they don't support out of the box, but I've written some kind of bunch of code that it would support. Yeah, exactly. It also has its own app. It's constantly live. You can remotely access it anywhere you are. So it's not, as I said, both of those have it's actually cloud on behind them, so you can actually interact with that. And for me, even though I have, let's say, a receiver connected to this web server, which is connected to the Apple TV, and through the cloud I can actually turn on the receiver at home as well and say to the kids that, come on, pick up the phone. So sometimes they are, let's say, missing out that the phone battery is dead. No, definitely no. I have this master switch that kill all that. That's done. Yeah, but the thing with this that sometimes kids also, let's say, turn on some kind of devices, but sometimes if things doesn't work as expected, then the wife is mad that she's sitting on the couch and said, I just turned on this light, it doesn't go on. You now go and turn on the light because somebody has to. So it's actually, if you get used to the system, it's actually quite hard to, no, you can go back, but no, you wouldn't rather go back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because Apple Watch has basically the out-of-box app for this HomeKit. So basically anything that you have implemented into the HomeKit basically works out of the box there. So it's quite straightforward integration in that sense. No, I have been looking around quite a lot, but the limitation for me was that I didn't want to damage the door. So to actually having the concrete things that fits into the door, let's say replacing the existing lock in it was a long time was very hard to find. Nowadays, I would say that as both Yale and Ploy actually are manufacturing those kind of smart locks, I'm already able to choose something from the market. But the only thing that has hold me back is the price, because the smart lock is really good. Smart lock is heavily pricey. I think it's like 300 to 500 euros. So it's not, let's say, a small cost. I don't even know. It's not about the electronical side of the lock. It's rather, let's say, you are substituting the whole lock in the system, because the add-on ones that you will just have this extension for the existing, let's say, lock are not very robust and doesn't always fit into especially for the European lock, because most of the locks are US based in the first round. So there was a long time there was no suitable locks for the European market, because European market has different kind of this I don't know, locking hearts, or what's the build. And I didn't want to really change the whole door for that. Battery easily quite long. So the battery is, I would say that probably it can sustain like a year or so. You still have the key. Yeah, regular key. So basically, you have this kind of engine only on the inside side of the door, but on the outside you still can have this kind of regular key in it. So it's not a problem. Some things also have this kind of pin pad, but it's not very common in Europe. And it also needs power, exactly. But some of those other alternative is that you have this kind of thumb lock in a sense, but you have this kind of it's called like counter iron or something, that has this magnetic, not on the lock side, but on this kind of length side, or how it's called. So basically that magnetic is open, and that can usually easily wire to some kind of wire box as well, but still it requires a bit more work. So it's more straightforward, and the information is to just put a smart lock and it will work out of the box. But again, the price is kind of high. So it's a question whether you really want it. But I would say that I probably would definitely use it because I'm so used to this garage door with kids, so it's really convenient. Anything else or anything from Tartu? Nothing. Nobody has written anything. Delay. I don't even know how much there are people. I didn't check the poll. Smart office. I think if you take like a regular building today, they actually should have some kind of smartness or actually ready for some kind of smartness for the lights and stuff like this. It shouldn't be very complex things to do. And as said, some of those things are actually coming from the proprietary solution. If you look at commercial real estate, they usually have some junction boxes already filled with automated kind of relays that actually can be programmed to turn off and on sometimes, and of course the security systems as well. So shouldn't be really an issue. Yes, yes, there is, because even if you just go out there and buy the Samsung Smart Home or the Apple TV and put the devices that really interact with those out of the box natively, you don't have to write any kind of code. It just works. But it's upfront investment probably is kind of pricey. You will, no, as I said, 10 sensors or 10 devices or even 5 devices each of 50 bucks plus the hub. Then you will probably still have some kind of 7 or 800 bucks of investment to get some value, but you don't really change your life yet completely. It will take some 20 sensors. I think I have some 40 devices, sensors or something like this, and I would say that okay, they are still missing something out, but no, I would say that already has, let's say, done a significant change. But you are limited in the functions if you just choose one platform still today. But that's why you have to be precise at what you're looking after. If you're saying like I want to have like a smart lock in the long run, then try to find a platform that will enable you this opportunity. Okay, that's it. Probably, did you want something more technical? I probably have some more technical information. But it's, Yes, not at the moment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's some cameras, very few of those, but I have 2 cameras that has besides the camera has a built-in moving sensor as well. So basically you are not controlling through the movement of this movement, let's say not the visual picture, but you're actually controlling it through the physical, let's say, device of this moving sensor, whether it's actually it's a combination of this infrared and something like this. So that's the case. But with the cameras, it's also I have like say few cameras set up in a way that you are taking the camera picture and you are defining the zone what it should monitor and what is also the, let's say, the how sensitive it is, because what the camera software can do is, one thing is you are defining the area what it monitors, and the second thing is that you're basically saying that if the 30% of the pixel change in a 1 second, I don't give a shit, but if the 60% of the pixel change in 1 second interval, then do something. So you can actually define from the software base this kind of also this sensitivity of the camera interface, what it sees. But sometimes it fails. It fails in the situation where I've seen that let's say the sun is coming behind the cloud, then it's like full like light, so a lot of pixel change in the video, so it's not, let's say, as robust compared to the physical movement sensor based on the infrared or something like this. So it's not so good, but in some cases it's again like better because if you look at the people moving outside with the warm clothes, you cannot detect any infrared, and especially if you are trying to, infrared sensor doesn't pick the signal through the glass window, for example. If you put the camera behind the glass window that looks out, useless infrared sensor because the heat signature is not detected, and then you can, through the glass, you can actually detect the movement as a changing image, but you cannot detect the infrared sensor like stuff like this. So you have to put the infrared sensor outside in order to actually get that kind of signal. So again, each of those systems have like different things. And in some cases, I even don't want to see the picture. I put this kind of regular torch sensor. If somebody moves the door or something like this happens, it's even like a better, like say, movement. Or you can put this kind of movement sensor into the fridge as well. That if somebody opens the fridge, so probably somebody's taking the beer. Okay, the signal is coming like this, or other cases, if some people have put this kind of like torch sensors inside the magazine box as well outside. If the magazine box, letter box is basically open, you can have, let's say, again, some kind of movement. So you can actually think of the standard sensor like different kind of scenarios. It doesn't have to be the most common scenario in some cases. So it's that's bit different approach in those cases. But with the movement sensors, I used to think that I need them a lot, but at the end of the day, I don't really have them. I probably have like four of these in the house, but maybe five, but not too much because I'm not using those for the robust scenarios too much. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? It's actually I cannot demo in the online, but I can actually demo you in that device, so you can actually see that how it looks like if you want. I don't know if nobody says anything about from Tartu, then I'm probably that's about it. Is there anyone in the Tartu anymore at all? Nobody's writing or anything. I don't really know. Maybe it's too much anyway, so everybody's left. Okay, probably not. I can kill it.